This video will demonstrate how to add an assignment to Moodle. From your Moodle page, simply click Add an Activity or Resource and choose Assignment. Give your assignment a name and a description if you like. You can add an additional file here simply by dragging and dropping the file or clicking the File button here to add something. This could be useful to add a text document that might give your assignment some instructions or anything else that you might like to instruct your students. We'll choose the availability here from when we'll allow submissions from, what the due date is, and what the cutoff date is. Allow submissions from is an important date to set because students cannot upload an assignment until this date has passed. If you want them to be able to add an assignment and submit it right away, you could simply uncheck Enable, and then they can submit it at any time that it's viewable. The due date is when the assignment is due. Moodle will make a note if anything is submitted after this. The cutoff date, however, is when Moodle will not accept any late submissions. So if we choose to make the due date February 1st, we could make the cutoff date February 2nd, which would allow students to submit by February 2nd, and it would just say that it was after the due date. You could also set a notification to remind you to grade, which is optional. Submission types is important settings because it determines what students can submit to their assignment. Typically, we want students to submit files, but you may also want them to submit online text, which will provide a box that they can simply type an answer into. In this case, we'll just allow them to submit files. The maximum number of uploaded files is how many files they're allowed to submit. You might only want one if you only want them to submit one file. If they have multiple, you could allow more than one. The submission size you typically don't have to adjust. We'll just leave it at the site upload limit. You can also choose what file types to accept. If you only want them to select PDF, for example, you can simply type in PDF here and click Choose. Now it'll highlight PDF, then you scroll all the way down, you can save changes. So in this case, students can only submit a PDF document. It will not allow them to submit a Word document, a JPEG, an image file, or any other file type. Feedback types are important in determining how you will give students feedback on their submitted assignments. By default, it checks off feedback comments, which will allow you to type in comments onto the student's work. You could choose to use the annotate PDF. If you do, please note it only accepts PDF. So we recommend making the accepted file type PDF so that students have to submit PDFs if you are going to be using that tool. You can also choose to allow feedback files, which will allow you to download student submissions, annotate them outside of Moodle, and then upload a file back to them. You can also use an offline grading worksheet if you like. We'll just leave it as the default for feedback comments. Submission settings typically do not have to be adjusted. You can take a look here if you want to adjust any of them, however. Group submission settings are only if students will be submitting in groups, in which case you can change this to yes and then select what groups they will be submitting in. Please note you do have to set up your groups before you do enable the submission here. One other thing to note is under the grade section. Here you can set what the grade is. If your assignment is out of 100 points, you can leave that as 100 points. If your assignment is being marked out of 30, you could change that here. You can also choose here whether you'll be using simple direct grading, a marking guide, or a rubric. We'll just leave it as simple direct grading and save. So once you set up your assignment, students can begin to submit as long as the Allow Submissions From date has passed. When students submit, you'll just have to click View All Submissions, and you can grade them by clicking the Grade button. If you want to set up advanced grading options like a rubric or marking guide, simply click on Advanced Grading from the Administration menu here. Change the drop-down here. We'll use a marking guide, and adjust the categories. Click to find new grading form from scratch. And here you can adjust whether you're using a marking guide or a rubric, what it's called, a description, and then you can add your criterion and the values. I'll just hit cancel and just go back to simple grading for now. So that's it for creating an assignment. Once you create it, students will be able to submit, and then you can grade them once they're finalized.